Welcome to Before You Go, the official podcast of Abode Contemplative Care for the Dying.
At Abode, our vision is that we live in a world where death is not feared and we live fully until we die. And we'd like to make that happen before we go. I'm Mary Thorsby, Abode's CEO.
I'm Natalie Buster, Abode's End of Life Doula and Yoga Director. Welcome to Before You Go.
Hey, Natalie.
Hi, Mary.
How are you today?
I love your necklace.
As you know, this was your mom's, and I'm always so happy to wear it. She collected Betsy Johnson jewelry, did she?
She did. She had an eye for color, and I feel like every time we wear a lot of color, I wear a lot of color, I see you wear a lot of color, I feel like she's with us.
Oh, well, she's with us today.
Mm-hmm.
It's our Abode custom to start any sort of gathering with a contemplative moment. It just reminds us to settle in and be present on the special time we have together. And for today's contemplative moment, I thought I'd share something I think about a lot working in the end of life field. I often wonder, well, how much time do I have left before I'm at end of life? My mother died when she was 92. I just turned 60. So if I live as long as she did, that means I have 32 years left of my life. And I think about that a lot because 32 years goes by in a flash. And that's all I've got before I go. And I wonder if any of our listeners, or maybe you, Natalie, are doing your own math in your head. And what does doing that math for me, I could be really sad and depressed about it, but I find it very motivating. I work very well on a deadline, and this is my ultimate deadline.
Yes.
So I find it very motivating to get up and get going, knowing that I only have such a short amount of time left to be here. How about you?
Oh, Mary, that is such a beautiful way to look at it. And I think we all can take a lot of knowledge from that and wisdom from that. To me, I'm going to be honest with you, like to me, that makes the pit of my stomach feel a little ooey gooey.
In a good way or a bad way?
At first, it makes me nervous, and I have a little anxiety in my life, and so I think that just kind of fires up the anxiety. But then what's nice, and I think like what you said, that anxiety then is transformed into action. That's what I know to do whenever I'm feeling anxious. I'll go to the gym or I'll do some yoga or some breath work. And so this anxiety around death and knowing that my mom died at 72, so I have a lot less time than she does. I'm about to turn 50, so I have about 22 years. And so that makes me a little nervous. And it's interesting where that comes from. Like, why do we have these fears about death, and what can we do about them? I'm wondering what our listeners think, and I think Mary and I both welcome you to let us know what that timeline or that ticking clock, or however you want to say it, how that makes you feel. And because I'm a yoga teacher, where in your body do you feel that? For me, it's my stomach, which is where I feel anxiety. So very interesting. Well, I thought we would talk about death, the fears of death and fears of dying, because that brought up something in me. Did not expect that, if I'm honest with you. But when we teach our end of life, our end of life yoga training and our end of life doula training, we start with our own mortality and having the people we teach kind of think about their mortality, think about any fears they might have around death and dying, or just looking at how they feel about the fact that they won't be around forever and ever. None of us gets out of here alive. And it's interesting because I've heard of all of these, and I think in our culture, we're really youth-centered. We're thinking about We want to live forever. We want to be young forever. And I think that kind of does us a disservice because it's important, in my opinion, to also be able to face our mortality and face our aging and face illness and potential disease and be able to face that and whatever comes up when we do.
It's all gonna happen whether we want it to or not, sooner or later. I mean, even Madonna is gonna die. I think, most of us realize that everybody's gonna die, but then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna die. Oh, that's gonna happen to me. Oh, I'm gonna die." And I remember the first time I really got that, I about hyperventilated, but that was quite a while ago. My mom, she gave us such a beautiful gift when she told us. She said, "I'm not afraid to die." And as soon as she said that, and I was caring for her, and my sister was caring for her, it just lifted a huge weight off of our shoulders to know that she wasn't scared of it. So
Oh,
I think it's a wonderful conversation to have.
oh yeah, and what a gift that she gave you. Because I'm sure you and your sister were afraid for her or maybe afraid to lose her and all of that. And so to hear that from her that she wasn't afraid. What a gift. Ooh. Well, I think that brings me to our first fear of death, grief to family and friends. So when I go, I'm afraid that my loved ones will be very sad and that they will not be able to carry on without me.
Do you really think that?
Well, I don't know. I have like a little list here, and I think I see a little truth in all of these fears. That the big one for me, and I just looked over and I saw my dog, and what is my dog going to do after I die? She's a Velcro dog, Mary. She is attached to my hip. She is a Mexican hairless terrier. She's a Xoloitzcuintli, and historically they are known as the Aztec dogs who escort souls to the afterlife. So it was meant to be that I have this dog, right? But she is so attached to me and I'm attached to her. And I'm just wondering what's going to happen after I die, if she's still around, if she outlives me. I don't know. Do you have any of, does that?
Well, I'm assuming that my dog Milo will I'm assuming I'll outlive him, and I'm gonna go to pieces, of course, when he leaves me. But yeah, I hadn't thought about if I were to die before Milo does. Oh, I don't know. He's such a love bug. He'd move on to the next gal.
He is. He's everyone's favorite at
He's
abode, for
everybody's.
sure.
I don't have that fear though, I don't have kiddos of my own, so I'm sure a few folks will be sad, but life will go on.
Yeah, and I think that might be the antidote to that, to make the most of your relationships now. If that is your fear, and dear listener, we're very curious what your fears are, or if this resonates with you, what can you do about that fear now before you go? And I think, yeah, making sure that you tell people that you love them, that you spend time with these people, that you just drink up every ounce of time with these people and make sure that they know that there is love there.
I agree with that 100%. That's all you have at the very end.
That's all you have. All there is love. Dun, da, 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 da. That's not how it goes, but trademark and everything. We got to change it up. um, Another one on my list is missing out after death. Oh, yeah. What is that? You're nodding your head, Mary. What does that bring up for you?
I think of all the fears that we're gonna talk about, that one is the one that I can relate to, that, "Oh my gosh, there's still so much more I wanna do and so many great things to be involved with, and I don't wanna stop." I do think, though, as you approach death, you're gonna be ready to go. Most folks are. Your body's gone through what it's going through. So it's gonna be a bummer that I'm not here to see what happens next.
But we won't know, or will we? I mean, we don't know. Yeah. So, and what we've seen, I think, with the people that we've cared for at Abode is you're right, they're usually ready to go. And their bodies know how to die. And they're not necessarily thinking of that. But I think now, when I think about death in the future, I'm afraid that, that novel that I started this book during the pandemic. I started writing a book and I finished the book. And I even had people read the book. Like I had beta readers. And you know where that book is now? It's still on my hard drive. Like, finish the book. That's what I can do. If I'm worried that I'm not going to get those projects done, right? Do the thing. Yeah.
Get it done before you go.
Right? Like, I've never been to Machu Picchu. I better go to Machu Picchu if that's a fear of mine. Making sure that I get the things done and live my life and do all of the things, finish the projects, or make sure that, let's say I have a business that is growing. I want to make sure that I have someone who can take over for me after I die.
Proactive steps.
Proactive. We're all about proaction here. With that don't know mind, of course. Another one here is the physical death process. Maybe pain or suffering that you have at the end of life. Maybe being a burden to your caregivers. Losing control of your body functions. Yeah. I don't know. What can people do about that? I'm afraid of the pain.
There's no need to be in pain as we die. If you're on hospice care, if you come to Abode, there are medications that help, and they should be used. They're very helpful. There's just no reason to go out that way. Being a burden to someone, I think a lot of us fear that, and so it's so important to have folks in your life who are able to help, and it's an honor to help someone at end of life. So, what you put out there comes back to you. And if you start now by being helpful to people who are having a rough go or just need a little assistance or a lot of assistance, hopefully it will come back to you. Hopefully it will come back to me when it's my time. But it's never too early to make those plans. Who do you want to take care of you? How are you going to find that person? How are you going to pay that person? You got to make these plans.
I think that's a really good antidote. And I like that you are an action person like I am. And so if I'm afraid that I am going to put my loved ones out, make those plans, do those advanced directives. Like we said in another episode, hire a death doula, hire an Abode end of life doula. Have someone help you so that you're not a burden on the people that you leave behind. And I think that goes into this next one, which is who will take care of the people I leave behind. Neither you or I have children, but I have a nephew whom I love. I have a dog that I love. But for a lot of our listeners, they have kids, they have grandkids, they have spouses. What can they do if that's a fear of taking care of the people that are left behind?
A sweet, sweet thing that some of our Abode guests do is they'll read into a recorder, they'll tape themselves, record themselves reading children's books so that those can be read to their kids or their grandchildren. Writing those love letters to family members and friends, and take the time to tell people how they, oh,
I know. We get emotional every time we talk. I swear. I swear there's always tears happening.
always always with the tears. You said earlier is just make sure people know how you feel about them and the difference that they've made in your life, and they'll do this for you too, I'm sure.
Well, and then the love lives on. I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time, and I loved this even before I started doing death work, was Coco. Is the Pixar film Coco. Oh my gosh. And it's all about being remembered. It's all about, see, I'm going to start crying. We have that song, Remember Me. And oh, how can you keep that legacy alive? How can you keep your loved ones with you? And it's through memory. It's through telling the stories. It's And so there's so much you can do before you go to set your loved ones up for success. They have something to put on their altar then, and you can visit on the Day of the Dead, or however the plot of that movie goes. But yeah, and I think also, let's say you have dependents, making sure that you are working with an end of life doula, a death doula, or an attorney to get that ready to go, so that all of the paperwork's in place. You have maybe some ways to set aside money for these people who are dependent on you, that you take care of it while you have the energy to do so. And I think that can help you provide, maybe financially, for your loved ones who may be dependent on you.
Right. And doing so will give you a sense of peace.
I think so. And it'll give the people that you leave behind a sense of peace too. it's, a, it's one of the best gifts you can give, I think.
I agree.
This is a big one, the afterlife. Where do I go? And I think we don't know. Like, nobody that I know has come back and told me what they have experienced. It's interesting though. I've done a lot of reading on people who have that kind of that returning from death, where they've glimpsed death, but they come back, and sometimes they see a white light, or they see a train, or they're trying to board a train. But ultimately, we don't know where our souls go. And I think, it depends on your faith foundation, and if there's something that you're afraid of and you believe in a certain thing, maybe meeting with your priest or rabbi or spiritual director, or imam, anyone who might be able to help you through some of those fears, and educating you a little bit about what your faith tells you about what happens after you go. I don't know. Can you think of anything else, Mary?
Well, I think that's a great point. I just will never forget one of our guests at Abode was dying and just really having just fighting it and thrashing about, and the look of terror in his eyes, I will never forget. And it turns out, I didn't know this, and I'll be more aware of it going forward. He was worried that he was going to hell. And I just was so taken aback by it, but that was his belief. And I agree with you. I think if I had known, we would have arranged for a priest or someone in the ministry to counsel him or listen to him and try to, because we never try to get involved in people's personal beliefs. That's theirs to hold. But I just felt that I just hated to see him in such discomfort, and perhaps we could have brought a little more peace to him. On the flip side of that, I don't know what happens, but I'm hopeful about it. I love the story about Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. When he was dying, he was a young man, and his sister was with him while he was dying. And as he was taking his last breaths, she said that he said, "Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow." And he was not one to be easily impressed. So I figure if this was of interest to Steve Jobs, well, it's gonna be of interest to me too. So it's given me a little bit of a something, "Oh, wow," is ahead because Steve Jobs said so.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, he's the inventor of Apple. Um, I can't wait. I can wait. I can wait. But I'm also kind of excited. I don't know what's out there, and there's a part of me that's really curious. And I was raised Lutheran, but I practice a lot of yoga now, and I really dabble in Buddhism, and I'm just interested in a lot of different faiths. and what they say about what happens when you go. And I'm excited. I'm curiously excited, if that makes sense. I don't want it to happen anytime soon, but I'm when it does, I'll be there with my eyes wide open.
Me too, and I think my mom's message, that she wasn't scared. I'm not scared either.
What about what happens to your body? But talk about the things you leave behind. We have possessions and money and bequeathments and all these things. What about this old bag of bones?
People worry about I would be worried that the thought of being a body in a casket just disintegrating, that doesn't sound like much fun to me, but I know it's traditional and a lot of people go that route. I'm not too keen about getting, burned up in a crematorium either, but I think the majority of folks are cremated these days, if I'm not mistaken. I love the body farm idea. I love the outdoors. I've always been a little outdoorsy. So the thought of just laying my body out by a river somewhere for students to study as I decompose, I'd be down with that.
Oh, I love that. So there was this Netflix show. I think it happened during the pandemic, but it was called Midnight Mass, and it's about this village that's secluded and vampires take over, and it's a horror series, but they really talk about death. And what I love, there's two monologues that two of the main characters say to each other. They're talking about what they think will happen when they die. One just wants to return to the soil. He wants all of the nutrients of his body, his skin, his bones, his muscles to feed the animals, the insects, the plants, so that he can live on. In essence, he becomes eternal when his body is able to feed the creatures of the earth. And I thought that was beautiful. But then what really got me was the answer that the woman said she wants to return to the source, which is love, and that she feels this calling to just be back, to be part of love, and that love is where we all came from, and it's where we'll all go again. And I thought that was absolutely gorgeous, both. And I'm like you, I would love to go to the body farm and let my body be beneficial to students or people who need a heart or lungs or corneas, or to the insects, or to the deer, or whomever. We saw a picture of a deer, at a place that does this kind of work, and it's like, good on you, dear. Get those nutrients, whatever helps you. That's how I feel, but I also know that not everyone shares my belief. But I think,
There's lots of options. So if you want to kind of address your fear of what happens to your body, Google it. There's tons of information out there. We've talked about it on a boat academy. So pick something that you would be proud to do as a way to honor your body after you don't need it anymore.
how about this? This is a big one for me. What happens to all my stuff?
Burn it. Just
Burn
get rid of it.
it. Give it away now.
Pull up the dumpster, toss it
Oh, I
in.
know.
Not everything though. I'll put those things aside, but oh my gosh.
I think some of us, we're when our loved ones go, they leave behind a lot of stuff, and it can be challenging. It can be beautiful. It could be this wonderful purging, kind of like that Swedish death cleaning. It can be very therapeutic to go through the things and have moments with each of the things. But it can also be overwhelming for the people we leave behind. And so I think one thing that I want to do for sure before I go is to make sure that everything either has a home, that maybe I've given away everything or sold everything or thrown away everything that I don't need with me in my final moments. It's easier said than done because we have attachments to things. We have newspaper clippings and collections of things. I have a mask collection of places that I've traveled to, and I bring back a mask that I hang on the wall. Well, what's going to happen to that collection? And it's probably important for me to start thinking about that. Like, is my nephew going to want my mask collection? I don't know. But starting to think about where those things can go, I think will help me.
I think that's a neat project for an end of life doula to be helpful with. We had a woman who was needing to come to a boat and knew she couldn't stay in her home much longer, but she had an art collection that she wanted to disperse and donate. And so we were able to send her an abode doula through our abode at home doula dispatch program. And that doula worked with her for probably 3 or 4 weeks, cataloging, distributing all of the details. And when it was finished, this person, Rebecca, could take a big, deep breath, exhale, come to abode, spend her last few weeks under our care with her family close by. And she was ready to go. It was beautiful. So those types of things that, where do things go? Now's a good time to start thinking about it. Now's a good time to take a section at a time in your home, toss things, burn things, give things away so that when you're at the very, very end, all you need is love. We've had people come to abode with absolutely nothing. And I always find that a little startling, but then I think that's all that matters in the end.
Yeah, we can go out the same way we came in.
Yep.
All right, the last one on my list, Mary, is not living a life fully lived.
Ah,
Ah! Ooh, that hit back in the gut. I'm feeling that gut sensation again. Ooh, yeah. I mean, I think that kind of is like the first one, or well, that maybe the second one where what are we missing out on? That we didn't do all of the things that we should have done.
yeah, our abode vision is that we live in a world where death is not feared and we live fully until we die. And that's our responsibility. That's our opportunity to live fully. And as I mentioned, I've got a good or bad, but I've got 32 years if I live as long as my mom. I have 32 years to live as fully as I can. And I think about that a lot, to make the most of every day. It's certainly a cliche, but it's true. We have such limited time. So if you're feeling like you're not living as fully and not reaching your full potential, get on with it. This is the time.
Get her done.
Get her done. Make sure you're doing what you love to do. And if you're not doing what you love to do, figure out how to get there and do what you love.
Yeah.
There's just not a second. There's no redos, right? There's not another showing of the show. This is not a rehearsal. You're the theater.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is dress rehearsal. This is the show. And when we take our last breath, the curtain comes down and you want people to think, wow, that was a great show she lived.
I want that standing ovation like celebrity death doula Alua Arthur once. I want a standing ovation.
That I love that. In her amazing TED Talk, Alua Arthur, she talks about having her loved ones all around her. And when she takes her last breath, they clap.
Well, what a great conversation. I feel a little less squiggly in my stomach. These last 22 years, or however many years I have, are going to be filled with me finishing all my projects. And in fact, before I go, I will make sure that I finish that novel.
Excellent. And before I go, I will read that novel.
Ooh, I love it. I just got chills. Thank you.
Challenge provided.
All right, dear listeners, thanks for joining us. Please let us know what your biggest fears are and if we helped you take maybe some of that fear away. Message us, reach out to us, visit us. You know what to do.
All right, that was a really good episode. But first of all, Mary, don't you ever say that Madonna's going to die, because I will be editing that out, because we are not putting that into the world. It's unacceptable.
Unacceptable. You are correct. Sorry, Mo.
Thank you. And now you can continue.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Before You Go, the official podcast of Abode Contemplative Care for the Dying.
At Abode, we believe that death is not a medical event. It's a very natural event. So therefore, we are not offering medical advice. We're simply sharing our experiences and knowledge with you before you go.
Make sure to visit us online at abodehome.org, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and while you're there, click that donate button to help us along. This podcast was edited by Make Your Day Richer.